Hello and welcome. Today's story is Pocahontas, Chapter 7, England. In 1616, Pocahontas, John Rolfe, and their son went to England. 10 of her people came too. After 7 weeks on the ship, they arrived in London. How big London is, Pocahontas said. There are hundreds of houses here and thousands of people. London was very noisy and exciting. Pocahontas was interested in everything. She went into the shops and looked at the food and dresses and the books. She went up and down the river Thames in a boat and saw the big houses of rich people. Every day she saw something new and wonderful. But London was very dirty too, because there were so many people. The river was dirty, and the water was bad. 2 of Pocahontas' people were ill and died. But Pocahontas was happy and excited. Every day she visited big houses and talked to rich and important people. Everybody in London wanted to meet her, to talk to her, to be her friend. The King and the Queen of England heard about John Rolfe's wife, the Indian girl from Virginia, and they wanted to meet her too. So one day Pocahontas went to visit King James and Queen Anne. They asked her about her father, Powhatan. My father is the king of the Algonquin people, she said. He has many men and villages. But our country is quieter than England. Our people understand the forests and the animals and the rivers. You can learn from us, and we can learn from you too. We must be friends. Of course we must, King James said. Jamestown has my name, so I'm very interested in it. They talked for some time, and then his wife, Queen Anne, said, I have a letter about you, Pocahontas. It's from the man called John Smith. He was your friend, he says, when you were a little girl. Is that true? For a second or two, Pocahontas could not speak. Then she said, a letter from John Smith? But he's dead. Queen Anne smiled. Dead? No, he's here in England. Look, here is the letter. The Queen looked at Pocahontas. What's the matter, my dear? Are you ill? No, I'm all right. I'm very happy. But that night, Pocahontas could not sleep. She was very excited. John Smith was not dead. He was alive and in England. But where? 2 days later, John Smith came to see her. He was older, of course, but she remembered him. A little man, not tall, but interesting, exciting, alive. He smiled at her with those beautiful blue eyes. Hello, Pocahontas, he said. Do you remember me? How could she forget him? She looked at him, but said nothing. John Rolfe watched them. It's John Smith, my dear, he said. Are you happy to see him? But Pocahontas was not happy. No, she said. I'm sorry, no. She looked out of the window at nothing. She couldn't look at John Smith. John Rolfe went out, and Smith waited. After a minute he said, You're a wife now, and a mother. Yes. Pocahontas looked at him and tried to smile. Do I look different? He asked. I'm older, I know. I had an accident, he said. I was very ill, so I came back to England, and after 2 years I got better. In Jamestown, they told me you were dead. Dead? No, not me. But you didn't tell me. You didn't write me a letter. Not one letter in 8 years, John Smith. But you were a child, Pocahontas. You couldn't read. Well, I can read now, she said angrily. Perhaps I was a child, John Smith, but my father gave you to me that day in my father's village long ago. Do you remember? That day was the beginning of my love for you. He looked at her sadly with those beautiful blue eyes, and she was a child again. She remembered everything. You didn't love me, she said. You never loved me. I don't know about love, he said slowly. You're the daughter of the king, Pocahontas, and I'm not rich or important. I never had a wife. Perhaps I don't understand women, and you were a child, Pocahontas. I was a child, but I loved you, and you went away, she said. For 8 years I heard nothing from you. For a long time he said nothing. Then he said, I'm sorry, Pocahontas, I was wrong. I love you so much, she said sadly. Then the door opened, and her little son Thomas came in. But now I have a son and a husband, she said, and they love me. You and I cannot be friends. Goodbye, John Smith. Goodbye, Pocahontas. He looked at her for a minute, and then walked out of the door. She never saw him again. 6 months later, John wrote saying, We must go back to Virginia, my dear. My work is waiting for me there, and you need to learn some of Virginia too. It was true. Pocahontas was now ill, and the cold rain of the English winter was not good for her. But she said nothing, and got ready to leave. The ship went down the river from London to the town called Gravesend near the sea. But when they got there, Pocahontas was very ill, and she could not move. John Grove sat by his wife's bed and watched her face sadly. She smiled at him. Goodbye, John. I'm going home. Home to the forests and rivers of my country.